Lions Nation, what is going on? Welcome to the Lions Pulse. I am Miko. And yeah, we're here on another Friday. Well, I think this is only like my second Friday stream, but yeah, we're back. This is what three streams in the week for me, or at least two, and then I had the premiere on Monday for Memorial Day. So, but no, we're here. As you guys can see in the thumbnail, as you can see in the title, we're definitely going to recap week 2 of OTAs. And before we get into all those things, you guys already know the routine by this point. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're new. Also, do me the biggest favor. And once you've done all those things, do like my guys, Grit and Big T, jump into the chat, say what up, show some love. I want to hear from you guys. It's Friday. We made it through the week. It's a I don't know, man. I don't know about you guys. In a way, it was a short week, obviously because of Memorial Day, but in another sense, it was also a really long week. Uh, I'm exhausted. I'm glad that we finally made it to Friday. But yeah, jump in the chat. Let me know what's going on with you. Guy Grit saying love the shirt Kirby's got on, but WTF is up with them shades. Listen, Grit. Everybody's got their own, style, has their own sense of swagger. I don't know. I they're not my style of shades, right? I typically go with the aviator style of sunglasses. Those are typically my jam. But I mean, listen, everybody's got their own style, everybody's got their own little swag, and apparently that's Kirby's. It definitely fits his personality, which we're definitely going to get into tonight and in this stream. Um, but yeah, like I said, jump in the chat. Let me know what's going on with you guys. Let me know what you have planned. If you have some cool plans for the weekend. Me personally, I'm again another reason I'm excited. The weekend's finally here. Got plans to take the family out to see Into the Spider-Verse 2 tomorrow with the kids and the wife. So got some things planned. Super excited that the weekend's here. So without further ado, without having to drag this on too long, let's get into OTAs and let's talk about some of the news that came out of OTAs yesterday. As you guys know, media only gets access to the Lions and their OTA practices once a week. So so far it looks like it's been every Thursday these last 2 weeks, and there were a lot more positive things I think to come out of this week's OTAs in comparison to last week. There were a couple bumps in the road, definitely, and we're going to get into some of that stuff. But let me know in the chat. I'm going to go through the things that really stood out to me, but definitely let me know in the chat if there's something that you heard or something that you came across in regards to OTAs that you want to talk about, and we can definitely have a conversation about it. But for me, and just because I don't want to leave this for last, and I want to give it a proper amount of attention. I want to talk about the kicker battle because apparently the Lions seem to have something really interesting and really exciting kind of brewing. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. We kind of talked about it in the last stream. The idea of the Lions having 3 kickers was something I was kind of on the fence about. I wasn't sure to be excited about. I wasn't sure if I was going to be irritated by it. But after hearing about how the kicking battle went yesterday, I'm actually more intrigued. I'm definitely more excited, and I'm really kind of going to have my ears kind of perked up when it comes to who's having the better day on field goal attempts, who's being called upon to do some of the long range kicks and things of that nature. Um, and the Lions definitely seem to have something interesting going yesterday with Parker Romo and Riley Patterson kind of going head to head in a couple of different scenarios. And from all reports, Parker Romo, the former XFL kicker, had the better day, showed to be a little more consistent, showed to have the bigger leg. And according to one person that I saw that I obviously was writing about this, Riley Patterson, for better or worse, kind of showed that same inconsistency that kind of got him cut last year. Now, with that said, I think it's always important to provide some level of context. Romo went 5 for 5 for his kicks, and the Lions had them kicking from a couple of different distances. They had him going from the 43, the 47, the 53, and the 57. So Parker Romo hit all of those kicks. So again, showing great amount of consistency, at the same time also showing a big enough leg to push it out to 57 as well. And so Riley Patterson had the same opportunity to hit the same kicks. And The only difference is he missed two of them. He missed a kick from 47 and he missed the kick from 57. And I will say personally, if you're asking your kicker to kick from 57, like you're already kind of asking them to do a lot, no matter who they are. Obviously, you would love to have someone that's more reliable and more automatic from that distance, but Riley Patterson missing a kick from 57 isn't shocking. Like this was kind of his MO when he was here is that he's not known for having the big leg. But typically from you know 45 and in, or even sometimes like a little bit within 50 and in, he's typically more money. Now, him missing a kick from 47, again, you don't want to see that either. But it's OTAs, and this is kind of what this time of the year is for. Is you're trying to get guys to knock off rust, to get into better rhythms, and to really see who's developed. And I think this battle between Parker Romo and Riley Patterson and Michael Badgley, once he's rolling out into OTAs or training camp, if we don't see him until training camp, is who's that more consistent, leg, come training camp and come into the preseason. Because as we saw last year, Austin Seibert definitely, by a lot of reports, was the better kicker in camp. But Austin Seibert wasn't the better kicker for the Lions once we got into the season. And Riley Patterson went off to go sign with Jacksonville and had a very good year and was very consistent for Jacksonville. Hence why the Lions felt the need to trade for him in the first place. So I'm intrigued. I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to Parker Romo, because I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I heard that we signed a guy from the XFL, I didn't have a lot of high hopes for him. I kind of viewed it in the same way that I viewed any UDFA or any 7th round pick, where it's like, hey, if you can get something out of this person, awesome. But at the same time, I just kind of looked at it as another body, another person to compete, another guy to challenge Michael Badgley at the time. Well, now you have a three-way battle, and we kind of have a good idea of what each kicker does pretty well. Parker Romo had a great year in the XFL, which is part of the reason why he's here in camp. Riley Patterson had a great year last year, showed to be very consistent on extra points and a lot of his field goal attempts. I think he hit all of his 50-yard attempts as well for Jacksonville. And we know that Michael Badgley was consistent in money for us in a lot of situations as well last year. So something that I thought was going to be somewhat of like a joke and kind of laughable might actually turn out to be very exciting and actually be worth our attention, because again, no one complains about your kicker when you have one, but the minute you don't have a kicker, like it becomes the number one thing that everybody finds a reason to have fault with. And while Dan Campbell obviously is no stranger to going for it on fourth downs, if we can make some of those fourth down decisions a little bit easier, if he has a guy that he can trust, like I said, even if it is from like 50 and in, you would love to have that. Now, if it's outside of the 50, then yeah, I'm perfectly fine with Dan rolling the dice depending on down and distance and things of that nature. But definitely having a kicker that can be relied upon throughout the course of a season is going to be a huge addition to the Lions. So I'm really going to be like locked in for the next couple weeks. And once training camp kicks off, as far as like, okay, which kicker's having the better day. And then obviously once preseason kicks off, who's handling responsibilities for kickoffs and who's showing to be more consistent. If these kickers are getting opportunities to kick field goals come preseason. Shout out to Soul Surfer saying, "Sup, Miko? What's good with you, Soul Surfer? Appreciate you coming by the streams." Grit saying OTA is just a refresher for players and an early fix for fans. I don't put much stock into it one way or the other. And I would say that you shouldn't, right? I don't think any of us should put too much stock. We shouldn't put too much stock into it, but we also shouldn't take anything away from it either. It's like you said, it's our first time to be able to get any type of indication of where these players are and where they are in their process of getting ready for the season. So nothing that we shouldn't overreact to any amount of news that we get, but we also shouldn't dismiss any news we get either, because there's always like some sort of hint into what could be trending and how this team or an individual could be trending towards the season. Soul Surfer also saying Money Badger is solid under 45, but doesn't kick off. When you need the long one, it's usually for the win. And that's true, right? That's typically, I think that was one of the reasons why Austin Seibert got the job last year, was that from what we were hearing during training camp and OTAs was like, well, he had the bigger leg. He was more consistent from long range, but again, like you're saying, like that long leg only kind of typically you're using it in game winning situations. But what happens throughout the course of a game if they're missing kicks, if they're missing extra points? Well, now they're putting your team in a hole for a completely different reason. So it's like, yeah, it's great if you can hit the long one, but can you be consistent to hit these gimmies in regards to just again chip shot, field goals or extra points? Can you still be able to be consistent in that sense? And that's something that we know for sure Michael Badgley and Riley Patterson were able to do for the Lions, or Michael Badgley was able to do for the Lions, and Riley Patterson was able to do for the Jaguars last year. So it's it's probably not the thing that I definitely was not what I was expecting to be talking about and expecting to have any amount of like intrigue in, but it is. It's exciting, and it's exciting, especially when you have a guy like Parker Romo who's showing the capability. I forgot to even mention this. So not only did he hit, from those different marks on the field, he also hit a 60 yarder. So like clearly has the leg. So showed consistently, showed the big leg, and now I think if there wasn't a great deal of pressure on Michael Badgley or Riley Patterson, because obviously he was traded for, I think that pressure is definitely there now, right? The minute you walk into the field and you see a dude kicking 60-yard bombs, well, now like, okay, yeah, this is real. And Parker Romo's probably hungry, right? Obviously, he got to play in the XFL, and that opportunity got him this opportunity. And I'm willing to bet anything that he's not looking to like piss that away and just rest on his laurels and the fact of like, hey, I got to the NFL, I got a tryout. It's clear that this dude is definitely trying to make the roster, and I think he's going to definitely give Patterson and Badgley a run for their money. Soul Surfer saying after Murray, Hansen, and Prater, we are spoiled, and you're probably right to a certain degree. I mean, we never should have let go of Matt Prater. Obviously, Hansen retired, so like, there's nothing that we can kind of say about that. Um, but yeah, I think for a while I would agree with what you're saying in the sense that like I think Lions fans were so used to having, just a kicker that they could just kind of trot out from any distance and kind of have a great deal of faith in. But again, it's one of those things where when you have it, you probably take it for granted. You probably just like overlook it and you just, it's automatic. But when you don't have it, you're starved for it, and you see why kickers get rotated so easily, right? I mean, again, Riley Patterson is a great example of it. He was great for Jacksonville, but the minute, Brandon McManus from Denver became available, Jacksonville was more than happy to ship him off for a kicker that they viewed to be better. Um, so again, like that hunt for a consistent kicker, for a kicker that has range, is something that every team in the NFL is looking for. And the Lions have a three-way battle for theirs right now. So again, it's something that we should definitely stay tuned for and keep our eyes on as things kind of develop throughout the offseason. So speaking of things developing and kind of even going back to what Grit was saying about not taking things too serious, or again me saying not overlooking anything. One thing that came out of OTAs yesterday, and it seems to be a continuation from the previous week, is that the Lions offense is kind of struggling early in these couple of workouts. And obviously, like, that's not something anyone wants to read when you're going through and you're trying to figure out like, okay, like who's having a good day, who's having a big day. Obviously, you would love to hear that Jared Goff is lighting it up, or you would love to hear that one of the receivers is just taking it to another level. And to see for 2 weeks in a row that like, hey, Goff is kind of struggling, or the offense as a whole is kind of struggling, it's not encouraging, right? But again, I wouldn't say it's time to panic. Like, we're second week of OTAs. There's no need to panic for anybody. Um, but it is something to take note of as far as, okay, let's see how this develops. Let's see how guys start to get on the same page. Ben Johnson spoke to the media this week and kind of even said like, hey, they're kind of taking it back to the basics a little bit. So they're not trying to put a bunch of new install in, because they do have a lot of new guys on offense. And so there's aspects of them just taking it back to the basics and keeping it fairly simple. But in that sense, like, hearing that they're keeping it simple and then seeing that there's a little bit of struggles here and there also isn't encouraging. So it's kind of like a trying to weigh how much I want to, you know, put too much stock into this report, right? Because again, this is what OTAs is for. It's for guys to knock off the rust, like I said earlier. It's for guys to get back on the same page. Um, you have guys like Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs who weren't here on this team last year, so they are trying to get their timing down with Jared Goff. And again, who knows how much time these guys spent running routes, or how many times Jared Goff or Nate Sudfeld was out there throwing the ball to whoever, right? Because it's probably not an NFL caliber receiver on every throwing session. But this is kind of just par for the course for me. Like, this is when going through the off season for me, I try to just take everything in stride. So nothing really bothers me, during this period of time. Things will start to bother me more once we get into training camp, and things will definitely start to bother me like once we start to get into preseason games and things like that. If we're starting to see some of the same mistakes made over and over again. But I know, like, one of the big headlines, and I'm sure it's going to start getting passed around in the next day or so, because again, it's that time of season. There's not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the Lions. Is again, Jared Goff having, kind of missing receivers, and him and Jamison Williams not being on the same page. Like, to me, this is a good thing that we're seeing this, because this is like the media's opportunity to see how they work through that conflict. And the fact that Jared is willing to get visibly upset with JMO is a good thing. You should want that type of feedback and be able to know, like, okay, I've done something wrong, and to be able to, man to man, have a conversation about what is expected of both parties. Jared Goff needs to be able to talk to JMO and tell JMO, like, hey, this is where I need you. I don't need you to cut this route short, or I need you to, make this cut sharper. And JMO needs to be able to talk to Jared Goff and be like, hey, I need you to lead me more, or I need the ball. Like, it'd be better if you place the ball here. That is the whole balance of quarterback and receiver, right? Like, you have to be able to get on the same page when we're talking about chemistry. It's not just knowing what the play is and running that route. It's actually knowing, like, hey, understanding timing, understanding when guys are going to come out of their break, understanding at what angle they're going to come out of their break. Because I think what the report was saying was that it was a post route. So if JMO's supposed to run a post, and Jared's expecting him to break it off and still keep it vertical, but JMO breaks it off and kind of flattens that route out near the top. Well, now, that's a miscommunication, right? That's where that happens. And now in a real live game situation, that's the difference between a touchdown and a pick, right? So ironing that stuff out now, even if it sounds like they're arguing, or if it sounds like, oh, Jared's not happy with JMO, like, this is good stuff that you want to hear. You want to know that your starting quarterback and your hopefully like star receiver are willing to have those tough conversations. It's kind of like what I say when people get into relationships. Like, if you get into a relationship and you never have an argument with your significant other, if you guys never go back and forth, I'm pretty sure somebody's lying to somebody then in that situation. Someone's not being honest about their true feelings. So the fact that Jared's willing to be honest, the fact that Ben Johnson is able to play mediator to both parties, these are good problems to have, because I think it will only lead to better connections once the season starts, once JMO is back in the fold, and these two will have a much better understanding of ball placement, and again, how JMO comes out of his breaks, how quickly he gets to a spot, and how quickly Jared needs to maybe process certain things. Grit saying Will Levis completely missed a practice net this week. Yeah, I mean, like, so this is like stuff that's going to happen, right? Like, quarterbacks are going to miss throws. There was again, the whole thing about with the Bucks, and their receivers just, and I mean, their quarterbacks just being completely out of tune with their receivers and just air mailing balls left and right. This is what that time of year is for. And I actually saw JJ Watt did like a video, and he kind of, put it out basically saying like, yo, like, let's not make, basically in so many words, let's not make a headline out of everything. These guys are rookies. They're going to make mistakes. Allow them to make their mistakes. And obviously in this situation, we're talking about veterans on offense, but again, we need to allow our players to get back in rhythm, to get back on the same page, because again, they spend so much time together during the season, but then the off season comes and guys go do their own things, right? They try to go relax, they try to enjoy their families, and now it's about getting all, back in rhythm and getting back on that timing. And for some people that's easier. Obviously, for someone like JMO, who didn't get a lot of practice time with golf last year, it's going to take a little bit longer than, for guys like Josh Reynolds, who has played with golf for years. For someone like Amon Ra, who again has played with golf consistently the last few years. So like there's way more chemistry built between those guys in comparison to a Jamison Williams. I'm also curious to see how much of this communication is different on throws down the field, because I think we've also heard that like Sam Laporta and Jared Goff have been able to, make a good connection fairly early. And I feel like, it's a little bit easier to make those connections when the throws aren't 10, 20 yards down the field. I think when it's just, again, simple like slants, out routes, drags, the timing is so much quicker, and you don't have to you don't have to launch a ball and have to worry about somebody tracking it. Like it's really like, hey, you're going to run this slant, you're going to take 3 to 5 steps, and then you're going to cut in. Whereas again, with something like a go or a fade or a deep post or a corner, like, yeah, those are 7-step drops. You're waiting for guys to come out of breaks. Like that's when the communication is really going to have to be like in tune, and you're really going to have to understand that chemistry, and again, just how guys run their routes and how quickly Jared processes things. So maybe JMO needs to move a little faster, right? Which is crazy to think that JMO would have to run a route faster than he already is, but that's what this time of year is for. So I don't know if anybody else has saw these types of reports and maybe getting concerned or getting worried about the connection between these two. If you are, I would be the first to tell you not to. Like, this is exactly what should be happening at this time. They should be trying to get on the same page. And if that results in some verbal, back and forth, awesome. It's better that they have those verbal back and forth than like Jared to throw his hands up and then not want to talk to JMO. That's when I would be concerned. If they're not talking, if they're not working together, if they're not trying to get on the same page, that's when the red flags should start, going up in people's minds. In regards to, again, what is going on with these two and what their chemistry is like. Shout out to my guy, Darth Twerk, greatest YouTube name out there, saying, yo, 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 appreciate you coming by, Darth. Grit, all caps, saying communication. Communication is key, right? No matter if you're playing sports, if you're in a relationship, if you're at your own job, communication is key. And if you don't have it, you can't really expect to find any like real, cohesion or success that way. Grit also, yeah, basically saying, right. And I, been married for almost 22 years, can't agree on everything. I've been married for 11, so half that time. And yeah, you're not going to agree on everything, but it's important to talk those things through, right? And so the same thing is going to be true in this sense of sports. JMO and golf and anybody else, right? Like whoever else he's maybe not building that relationship with, or he's just, again, not building it, but the chemistry just isn't there yet. Those guys got to be able to talk that stuff through. They got to be able to again hash it out. And sometimes that requires you to raise your voice a little bit. Sometimes that means guys get emotional or emotions run high. Nothing wrong with it. It's the best thing that could happen, again, for the longevity of the team. JT's massive purpose, as you said it, and also said, what up, though? They said offense is basically brand new along with the defense. It's going to be some mishaps. This is the time to make mistakes and improve anyways. I don't know why people are tripping. I don't know either. And I think it's because I know why. It's because this was a top tier offense. This was your best unit a year ago. And what people typically think is like, oh, well, if that was the best unit a year ago, they're going to hit OTAs and they're just going to be rolling. They're just going to pick up exactly where they left off. And this is something that I'm glad this is happening, because I think this should be a great reminder of what could happen in the season. Not saying that we want it to happen, but we have to remember what happened last season was last season. What happens this season is this season. Things don't just translate. You don't get to just take that momentum from week 18 after beating the Packers and start week 1 against Kansas City with that same momentum. There's new players, there's new schemes, there's been adjustments made to playbooks for every team. You have to put in the work to do this all over again. And if we've been listening to Dan Campbell, that's kind of what he's been saying. This is the time to put the work in. This is the time to get, guys on the same page. This is the time to get all the kinks worked out, to get any type of mental fog that you might have or any rust that you might have. This is the time to work that stuff out, because when it comes week 1, when it comes to that, that first game against Kansas City. You want these guys hitting the ground running, and you want these guys putting their best foot forward. Um, Huggy Bear, my guy, what's up, man? Saying if Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, or Patrick Mahomes chew out JMO, it would be called great leadership, but not golf. The hate is real. And I think that's the thing, right? And I don't even know if it's necessarily the fact that it's golf. I think it's people are still holding on to the social media stuff with JMO, right? People are still holding on to, him liking tweets that have Lamar Jackson in it. And I mean, I wasn't gonna bring it up, but like the first media session with Dan Campbell, like the very first question he got is about JMO's social media all over again. Like some people just aren't letting that go. So if they get any whiff or any hint that there might be some animosity, they're going to run with it. And that's not fair. That's not fair to Jared, and it's not fair to JMO. These guys are teammates, and teammates argue. You've seen it from every great quarterback has had a back and forth with a teammate of some kind. I think one of my favorites is like, have you guys ever seen the clip of like Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday like literally just lighting each other up? And it's just like, but they were two, like we know for a fact they were two of like the best friends, quarterback and center, like had such a great relationship. But even in the course of playing sports, when you're talking about winning, when you're talking about perfection, yeah, miscues will get you upset, and that's going, and you have to be able to verbalize that stuff so that it can be known and so that you can move past it. This is no different than Jared Goff. Jared Goff has every right to call out his second year receiver if he believes that he's not doing something right. And JMO has every right to defend himself if he feels like, hey, I need the ball this way. That is, again, going back to what I was saying earlier. It's all about communication. It's all about getting on the same page. So it's not a big deal in the least, in my opinion. And Casey seems to agree. It's slow news cycle, and media pundits are overanalyzing the OTAs in quiet season, so it makes sense. Extreme reactions and asking questions that may be off base. And it is, right? Like again, they're not some of these players they're not going to get to talk to again until training camp. And so they're going to ask every off the wall question they can think of. And again, I don't fault them. That's their job. They have to write news stories, just like I have to come on here and, host a stream for you guys. If they don't ask questions, I don't probably have anything to talk about. If they're not observing practice, there's not a lot that I have to go off of and be able to give you guys my feedback on. So there's a yin and yang to this for sure. But this time of year, yeah, it's full of overreactions. Um, Again, we talked about it on Wednesday. Like there's the thoughts of like when the news came out that Aleem dropped weight, right? There's some people that ran within like, oh, he's going to be so much better. And it's like he might be. He very well could be, but like, how about we just take that for what it is? Like, okay, cool. Aleem's in better shape. Let's see how it plays out in the season instead of taking that bit of information and feeling like we have to heap on ridiculous expectations. It's just not necessary. Another good example of this was actually, and this is a great transition to what I was going to talk about next, is like we see that in what is happening with Jahmyr Gibbs. So Jahmyr Gibbs apparently had a fantastic day at OTAs yesterday, and that's awesome. And it's kind of even evident in like the photo gallery that they released yesterday. Jahmyr Gibbs is in like almost every photo that they possibly could, like, and that's great. He's your number 12 overall pick. He was the first pick the Lions made in the draft. There's a lot of question marks about him as far as like how they're going to utilize him. But Bleacher Report drops an article today talking about, how much of a natural he looks at the wide receiver position. And I feel like that article's a little misleading. I feel like it kind of makes people think like, oh, is he going to be playing more wide receiver than running back? And it's like, no, this is just Jahmyr Gibbs showcasing the same talent that he had at Alabama. If anybody, and I'm not talking to you guys specifically because I know you guys have watched and I know you guys did your research, but like for people who didn't know, like if you watch Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama, this was in his bag. That he, was a great pass catcher. That was one of the reasons why he was the number 2 running back in this draft class. Just because a lot of people didn't see him going in the first round didn't mean that he didn't have this skill set. The Lions are just putting it on display. They drafted him to do these things that they saw him do in college. And I'm excited about it, right? One of the things, another one of the benefits of OTAs is that you get these young guys, these rookies, to finally go up against veterans, to go up into get into their offense that they're going to be running and see what they're really capable of. And you're able to see who sinks or swims. And it's a great sign that Jahmyr Gibbs is swimming early. On the flip side of that, though, I'm not surprised, right? If you guys watched my evaluation or my comp for Jahmyr Gibbs, these are the things that I expected him to do. He would be used in the passing game. He would be showing great patience. He would be showing great explosiveness. Like that article that came out today wasn't new. I like literally rolled my eyes like, bro, like who didn't know these things? Um, and so I'm happy for Jahmyr, but at the same time, like this is what should be happening. This is what he needs to do to be able to one ingratiate himself to this offense, to be able to build trust with Jared Goff and to build trust with Ben Johnson that they can put him on the field. And at the same time, this is OTAs. There's no pads. There's not a lot of contact. He should have the advantage in whatever scenario that they're putting him in where he's out catching routes or catching passes, running routes, uh, or again, just running the ball because they can't really touch him. These are great signs. The proof in the pudding is going to come again once training camp rolls around, once preseason rolls around, once he's able to like take live snaps and actually have to worry about someone trying to, hinder him and keep him from gaining yards. It's it like I said earlier, it's not insignificant, but I don't like the idea of like, hey, let's make this like so much bigger and like I guess my thing was this. I saw that headline and like in a subtle way, I felt like they were trying to get as close as they possibly could to like saying Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the next Alvin Kamara. And I don't think that's fair for Jahmyr in his rookie year. I think he has a lot of potential. I think he's going to be great. I think he has a really high ceiling. I also think that Alvin Kamara is probably not the best comp for him just because based off of their running style. But I think he will be really good. I think he will have an opportunity, especially if he gets the touches, to compete for offensive rookie of the year because he just has that explosiveness. He has that next gear. And he has such a diverse skill set as both a passer, as both a pass catcher and a runner. But what he's doing in OTAs right now is something that we should all have been expecting all along. Grit saying without Gibbs, Bryce is the second overall pick. Uh, yeah, without Gibbs, Bryce is the second overall draft pick instead of number one. That's a really good point because Alabama wasn't very good, like offensively, in the sense of like their offensive line wasn't very good. But having a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs really made that offense a lot better. Their wide receivers weren't, they were a step down from what we're used to. The last few years, Alabama has put out some really good wide receivers. Jameson Williams, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith. Alabama's known for putting out top tier talent at the wide receiver position. And this past year wasn't quite that. Bryce did a lot of good things, but he had someone that was explosive in Jahmyr Gibbs. That offensive line wasn't all that great. So Jahmyr doing what he's doing, like I said, shouldn't surprise anybody. All you have to do is turn on Alabama's tape and you'll see him do a lot of these impressive things. Better yet, turn on his Georgia Tech tape and you'll see him doing a lot of these things. It's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Casey saying solid OTAs, training camp, preseason are like arguing who's skinniest kid at fat camp. Just ask Tom Kennedy, Oban Easy, and Maurice Alexander. Exactly, right? And that's also why, full transparency, probably won't get a lot of updates from those types of players from me because at the end of the day, like we know who's probably going to make this roster. I talked about it a couple streams ago in the idea that like, listen, not saying that there's no capable UDFAs on this team, but there's not any that are like going to get my attention out the gate. Not until training camp, not until preseason, when you're actually going to be able to showcase physicality and your athleticism in a way that is like true competition. Dan said it. Ben Johnson has said it. I mean, Aaron Glenn has said it. Like, what is happening in OTAs? It's mostly about mental reps, right? That's why they're voluntary. That's why they're not tripping when guys are sitting out or guys aren't at OTAs. It's because they know that this is really just like a mental part of the game. This is the part where they need to just learn the playbook, learn the schematics of how things are going to be, get timing down. Because once training camp rolls around, yeah, now we're playing football. Once we have pads on, now we're really gearing up for the season and trying to get you physically ready as well as mentally ready for the season to officially kick off. Huggy Bear saying Gibbs was number one in passes caught in Alabama, and then whenever Bryce Young was in trouble, he looked for Gibbs. And that's again, so these are all things that we knew. So like again, like this idea that like, you know, oh, he's looking like a natural, like it's not a surprise. And I don't even so that quote initially came from the Athletic from Colton Pouncey. Like, I don't fault him for making that quote. He made an observation and he was just like, yo, he looks like a natural. Bleacher Report decided to blow it up as if it's like breaking news. It wasn't even like one of the big observations that Colton made. It was like, oh, in additional news to like some of the big things that he had already pointed out, Jahmyr Gibbs looks like a natural at wide receiver. He looks like a natural catching the ball. I don't even think he necessarily said at wide receiver. He just said like, hey, he looks like a natural running routes and catching the ball. Not a surprise, right? Not a surprise at all. But it's worth pointing out because Jahmyr Gibbs was hurt, so he was missing, a couple OTA practices last week. David Montgomery's not there, so like it's not like there's like the comparison of Gibbs to the other running backs that are available. You're able to see like, wow, there's a drastic difference in how these guys catch the ball and how they run routes. So I'm happy to hear that about Gibbs because again, I want these rookies, especially these high draft picks, to make their presence felt early. Sam Laporte has been doing that. Jack Campbell has had his moments, and now Jahmyr Gibbs' name is finally being thrown in the conversation as another guy who they took high, who they have a lot invested in for their future, and he's capitalizing on it, and that's great. Soul Surfer saying, wait for the defensive backfield in preseason. They are guaranteed to be awful until they're not. It will take some time for them to gel. It's not like they're adding a player to an established group. Yeah, I think that's also true as well, right? Like the DBs have actually like it seems like they've been playing really well, and that was actually going to be like the next thing I kind of transition to. Um, but before I do that, Casey, you have a really good question. How many tight ends make the roster? 4 or 3? Brock Wright, Laporta, Mitchell, and Zylstra odd man out. Um, I think the safe bet is 3. I think the safe bet is 3 because Shane Zylstra kind of has always just kind of been that guy that he might just make it on the practice squad or they might bring him back later. But I think the goal would probably or the idea would be to have 3. Um, I think they really like what they have in Brock Wright. Again, he's kind of their more um Brock Wright is their more versatile tight end. He can block, he can be a sneaky pass catcher. Obviously, they drafted Sam really high, and there's a lot of expectations for him to perform this year. And James Mitchell is somebody that I think is going to get more opportunities than I think we realize. Especially if him and Sam are able to be on the field at the same time, just because of the athleticism that James Mitchell has. There's already people talking about, Dan Campbell has said it. I think Ben Johnson has said it as well. Like, hey, he looks more athletic. He just looks better than he did a year ago. And again, he's now a year removed from that ACL injury. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities because again, this is another guy they drafted. And if I remember correctly, a lot of people were saying like, hey, had it not been for that ACL injury, he goes higher than the 6th round or the 5th round, wherever he was drafted. Like he's probably a higher day 2 pick if he's not hurt. So James Mitchell is somebody that I definitely have my eyes on. Once the season kind of starts and once we get into preseason, I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to really, make some noise for this offense. Soul Surfer, exactly. With my rant about Gibbs, laugh out loud. Breaking news: Gibbs looks like an early 1st round pick. Apparently, like people just didn't get that memo before the draft. Apparently, like that should have been circulating, across the media waves then. So this way, people wouldn't have been so shocked once OTAs kicked off. One thing that so another thing that I just kind of changing gears here, that really kind of stood out to me about some of the observations and some of the things that I was seeing out of OTAs yesterday is just like this balanced leadership that I get the sense of in that DB room. The Lions obviously invested a lot. The Lions invested a lot of of capital and just draft picks and free agent signings into that defensive back room. And in a way, when I saw all these pieces coming together, like obviously like there's excitement because like this group looks so much better on paper than they did a year ago. But then you kind of like it's always that idea like when you bring in so many alphas, you start to wonder like, okay, is there like some infighting because guys don't know, how to take a back seat because you have so many alphas and guys just want to lead. Cam Sutton was the first one that they brought in, and I don't know about you guys, but like I was blown away by Cam Sutton's press conference. Like well spoken, just like dude that was just locked in and just felt like, you know what, like he's going to bring a level of maturity to that room that they just haven't had in a long time. Emmanuel Mosley, another guy where again, he more so like leader by example, but you can just tell by the way that he had been playing before his injury, he was somebody that would be able to push that he would be able to push these guys and have them play to a higher level. And then they go out and they still sign a CJ, Gardner Johnson. And even from day one, he's coming in talking about like, yo, I want to be a leader. I want to help mentor these guys. I want to help these guys know how to learn how to be pros and things of that nature. And then on top of that, you have Tracy Walker coming back, who was your captain last year on defense. And so there was this idea. I was like, man, that's a lot of alphas in a room. That's a lot of guys who have um every right to be probably named a captain or to be named leader in that group. And not to mention you have Kerby Joseph coming back in. So even though he's a second year player, but like played at a high level, is coming in with a lot of swagger. And it shows in his press conference and it shows from what we hear on the field and like just all the trash talking that's going on between all of these players. And so I like sat there watching Kirby's press conference, then going to Cam Sutton's press conference, rewatching Tracy Walker's press conference, and just sitting back and just kind of being in awe of like, dude, Aaron Glenn might have the best defensive back room that he's had since his days at the Saints. He's got guys that not only want to lead, but can lead and are also okay with taking a back seat. Cam Sutton talked about it where it's like Cam Sutton and Tracy Walker both talked about it where it's like, yo, like I'm not just because I want to lead and because I'm capable of leading doesn't mean that someone else can't teach me something. And that's huge. When you're working with other people, it's really tough. Like it's cool if you have a leader, but when leaders don't want to take advice or where they only want to be the voice in the room, that can be annoying. That can be frustrating. And to know that you have a bunch of guys with different personalities, but also are still cognitive of the fact that like, hey, that guy can actually teach me something. This is an opportunity for me to be quiet and learn and not feel like I got to be the alpha in the room. And I think from what we're gathering from again these guys and their press conferences and how they are operating in practice, like this group is going to be like legit. Like I have a lot of if there's one thing that I'm probably taking too much out of this early in OTAs, it's the chemistry that group is building. Because I think you just have enough veteran voices and enough guys who have done it and been there, who have played at high levels. Obviously, CJ's coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. Cam's coming from one of the most winningest, football franchises in the NFL. Um, you you just kind of like start to get this feeling like, yo, there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of experience that these guys can impart onto one another. And so it gets me excited. I told you guys in the last stream, like safety is my favorite position. Defensive back in general, like I tend to gravitate to those type of players. So to see these guys getting on the same page and knowing what their issues were a year ago, knowing that communication was a problem on the back end, and that the fact that these guys are putting in the work to get that right now, dude, it blows me away. And the fact that there's so much balanced leadership, right? You have wise, savvy veterans in a Cam Sutton and in a Tracy Walker, but then you still have those dogs. You still have those guys that are willing to let their emotions hang out and be highly competitive in a Kerby Joseph and a CJ Gardner Johnson. And that's what you need. You need that blend. Everybody doesn't need to always be at 10. You do need to have heady players and somebody that can, again, rein the other guys in if someone is going off a little bit. Kerby talked about it where like one of the things that he's looking to focus on and improve on is just again his anticipation and understanding where he's supposed to be at what time because he made so many big plays last year. It would be easy for him to just go out there head hunting and just looking for this next interception, but like he still has to learn. And that's where a CJ can come in. That's where a Tracy comes in. That's where a Cam comes in. That's where I mean, even a Brian Branch, who again is a rookie, but a very smart one by all reports. So like there's just so much opportunity for everyone to learn. Um, Grit says the best, right? Like you never stop learning, and you shouldn't. If you're really serious about becoming best at your craft, you should never stop trying to learn. For example, like I'm trying to become a better YouTuber and a better streamer. I never stop learning. I try to watch as many people as I can to pick up little tidbits and trying to understand how to become better at this, so that you guys have a really cool place to kind of come to and hang out. Speaking of which, I forgot to like I always forget to do this during the stream, but yo, I see that there's about 14 of you guys, 14 of you all watching. Please be sure to hit that like button. It helps out the channel so much. If you're new around here, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I typically stream 2 to 3 times a week, so hitting the notification bell is the best way for you to like be notified when I'm going live. Even though I typically go live again on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then you'll occasionally get the occasional Friday stream from me. But going back into the comments, uh Casey saying Cam Sutton and Jack Campbell interviews are really intense dudes. Like, yeah, like that just when NFL players are able to just articulate themselves, when they're able to just showcase their emotion and their passion, um, that always gets me fired up, right? I mean, even again, Kerby is way more outspoken than I normally am in real life, but like even that level of swagger and that level of confidence. I mean, dude's out here rocking a free JMO shirt unprompted just because someone sent it to him and just because he wants to show his teammate that like, yo, I got you, that like you're still a part of the team and we still want you here is awesome. And again, that's the type of chemistry and that's the type of culture that you want your football team to have, is a bunch of guys that aren't afraid to learn from each other, but also are always there to pick each other up. It's truly awesome in that regard. Um, Mark LeBay saying if Jack Campbell had bug eyes during interviews, if Jack Campbell had bug eyes during interviews, he would remind me of Ray Lewis. I mean, yeah, Jack is like again, Jack is another guy like that I was just saying, like his passion just showcases itself in his interviews. He's you can tell he's all about football, and that's something that's great. Sam Laporta is someone that's been cracking me up just in like his photos and everything that they're getting. Like, dude is so happy to play football. And it just kind of further pinpoints what Brad and Dan are looking for, and that they're finding those guys. They're finding guys that genuinely love to play this game, and they're genuinely excited to be a part of this team. So that's awesome to see. Uh, Casey, I missed this question earlier, but I'm gonna go up to it really quick. You asked who nabs the punt slash kickoff return job: Antoine Green, Khalif Raymond, other. It's that job's Leafs. It's kind of that simple. As far as punt returns, that job is absolutely Leafs. I don't see any of the other guys taking it from him. Kickoff, kickoff might be Maurice Alexander. They love to use him in that role last year. I could see again them keeping him around, kind of just like as like the same way they did last year, where like they kind of bounce him back and forth. Um, what I would love to see, in all honesty, is JMO and Gibbs get opportunities like later in the season. Obviously not from like week one, but I think when you have guys that are that explosive that can do it, especially with kickoffs where like kickoffs are rarely returned anyway. So like you literally could kind of just stick anybody back there to fair catch. But I think occasionally throwing JMO or Gibbs back there would allow, special teams, opposing special team units to be a little more wary, because those guys are instant, just lightning in a bottle type of guys that can absolutely take it the distance. So I'm really kind of looking forward to like what they do in the kickoff situation. Um, it's a little weird because Khalif is their primary punt returner, but he doesn't do a lot of kick return stuff. Um, so I don't know. Dan Campbell kind of talked about it where the plan was to make him more of a full-time special teams guy and to kind of use him sparingly in the offense. If they decide that they don't want to carry too many other receivers, if they don't feel that it's necessary to carry an Antoine Green, or they don't feel like it's necessary to carry a Maurice Alexander for kickoff, I could see them give Leaf those opportunities, instead of trying to carry another player just for the hell of, again, returning a couple kicks a game, because it doesn't happen all that often. Um, Da, 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 da. Oh, Soul Surfer saying Sutton and Mosley's history as roommates will help as well as CJ's maturity. The entire team is made of alphas. They'll figure it out. Ultimately, it will be an alpha defense. And I agree. I think that's the thing that, again, like that has me excited. Dan Campbell has been talking about it from day one, is that they've been trying to implement a style and a culture around this team so that when they had the proper pieces in place, when they had the right guys in place, they could kind of turn the keys over to this team and it becomes a team led, um it becomes a player led team, and the coaches are here just to install and get them ready for games, but they're policing themselves, they're holding each other accountable, and that's what any team, any company, right? Anyone that has to build a group of people, like, that's what you would want. You want guys that can be, or a group of people that can be self-sufficient, that know how to motivate themselves, so that you're not feeling like you have to constantly, wind guys up, just to get them to get the job done. And the Lions look like they're on their way of doing that. Another good example of that, which is another great transition to like my last topic, but it's the new leadership role for Penei, right? Like, Penei got to meet with the media this week and kind of dropped this nugget that he himself is taking more of a vocal leadership type role, kind of at the behest of Jared Goff last year, and saying that, like, hey, you have to be, willing to talk, you have to be willing to speak from the heart and make your voice heard. And this is huge again for the Lions, because Penei was the first draft pick of this regime, and in a way he's somewhat of a cornerstone of what Dan and Brad want this team to be. And he's had that energy, he's had that persona from the first day that he set foot in Detroit. And so knowing that he's becoming more vocal and that he's, going to kind of start being that guy, at least on the offensive end, to kind of get guys up for games and be this verbal leader that they need, is huge. Um, Panay's probably one of the, again, he's one of those cornerstone pieces that he's going to be here for years to come, and you would rather have him taking these steps now and showcasing his leadership ability, so that guys become comfortable with following him. Obviously, you have Frank, and obviously you have Taylor, you have Big V, you have Goff, that are obviously older and they have more experience in the league than him. But Panay is the truth as far as a talent, and you can just kind of, he's one of those guys on this team. When you look at him and you look at how he carries himself, you look at just his demeanor, he's just locked in with what this team needs to accomplish. He's everything that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes want this team to be. He's all of that in your right tackle. And this is, again, another reassuring sign. This is another benefit of having OTAs, is that guys, again, get these opportunities to step up and to take leadership roles, especially when you have veteran guys that might be out. Obviously, that's not the case with Penei, but because Panay's a for sure starter, but still taking those opportunities to speak up, because again, not everybody is good at being a verbal leader. I think Amon Ra comes to mind, right? Where Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great, like, lead by example kind of guy. He's going to be the guy that's going to stay after. He's going to put in the extra work, and if that speaks to you just by seeing how he works, you're probably going to do the same. And we've heard of Lions receivers doing that, staying behind practice and catching extra passes, because that's what Saint does. And if Saint's the number one receiver and he's doing it, then who are you to not put in that same type of work? The same is going to be true for Penei. And now Penei cannot just go out there and perform, but he can also put that verbal energy behind it. It was one of the things that fans at least gravitated towards so mightily with Jamal Williams when he was here, is that he was willing to speak from the heart and really try to help galvanize that team. Well, now you seem to have another guy on that offensive side of the football that's willing to do that. and is at least getting, comfortable doing that so that these guys know exactly what they're getting in a Penei Sewell when it comes down to them taking the field on Sundays. Casey saying, "I'd like to be at a barbecue with Laporta, Bugs, Coach Campbell, James Houston, and Taylor Decker. I'd be scared to invite Penei, Sutton, St. Brown, or Jack Campbell." Honestly, like if I could hang out with like Penei, Saint, and Tracy Walker would probably like the guys I would want to hang out with the most. And then if it was like if I had to throw in coaches, like AG would probably be like the coach that I would love to hang out with, and probably Kelvin Shepherd. Like those two would be like I think I would just like have a blast with those guys. Um, Shout out to Steve-O in the chat saying one pride, and also saying we got a whole team of leaders. So the guys looked at as leaders in the locker room are some real alphas. And I think that's the other part of it, right? When there are so many guys that you feel like are capable of leading, and they do, and or guys are willing to follow those other players, it just showcases how much respect they've garnered from those players. And so again, it has me excited. I don't know, maybe too excited. I don't know yet. I'm trying to keep my emotions in check. I joke with one of my friends about like how much Kool-Aid I'm going to be drinking during the off season. I try to keep it like to a minimal. Like it's like shot glasses level of Kool-Aid that I try to take for the Lions as we get ready for the season, because the one thing that I always try to keep in mind is that this team is not the only team that's preparing. This team is not the only team that's getting better. And this team is not the only team that has aspirations to go to a Super Bowl. So while these are great things, like I said, everything I listed off, even though, like I said, the offense kind of struggling a little bit, these are all good things to be hearing because you'd rather them happen now than to be happening in training camp. If we were hearing about the offense struggling in training camp, yeah, there'd be a little bit of panic because it's like, why are they not in sync? What could actually be the problem? But everything that you're hearing now is good, and it should have you excited. Obviously, keep it in check. Try not to go too overboard with it, but it's a fun time, right? This is a fun time to be a Lions fan. We all know that with the expectations that we have for this team, but we just kind of got to like sit back and enjoy the ride. Try not to get too high. Try not to get too low. People are going to write articles. People are going to dismiss the Lions and say that we're fraudulent. Whatever. Bears fans are going to talk their talk. Whatever the case may be, we know what this team is capable of, and we have to continue to just kind of let that play out as the offseason kind of rolls on. Casey with another question saying, who bites more kneecaps this coming season, Jack Campbell or Brian Branch? Jack Campbell by far, right? Like Jack is going to start more than likely week 1. I'm standing by that. I would still be shocked if Jack is not starting week 1. But Brian Branch is going to get his opportunities. Aaron Glenn has said as much, that Brian Branch is going to have his opportunities. They don't know where they're going to use him, but it kind of already sounds, again, early in OTAs at least, we'll have to see once pads come on, but it kind of sounds early on that like Brian Branch is making an impression as well on Aaron Glenn, to the fact that like, yo, we don't know exactly where we're going to use him right now, but like, yeah, he's going to probably be on the field in some capacity. So again, just great little tidbits here and there that you're getting from like whether it's the coaches or the players in their interviews, whether it's highlight videos that, like, again, Grit said earlier in the chat that the Lions dropped a new highlight video of OTAs for this week, so definitely going to check that out. But yeah, like there's so much to take from what this team is doing, and like I said, it's a great time to be a Lions fan. So I don't like that's pretty much all I got for you guys, right? Some good things coming out of OTAs. We should be excited. I think they still have an OTAs practice next week. They could possibly have the week off. I'll have to double check that. But either way, I'll be back here on Monday. We'll have some other Lions stuff to talk about. If there's nothing like newsworthy, we'll probably just have some random topics about just, again, things looking ahead to the season. There's a couple players and there's a couple things that like we can kind of start putting together. We can do a 53-man roster prediction. There's a lot of stuff we can kind of get into as again, we're in off-season mode and there's not going to be a lot of news. So, but we'll find stuff to talk about because there's always something going on for the Lions fans, and there's always something for us to evaluate, get excited about, so on and so forth. Soul Surfer saying, as longtime Lions fans, we've learned to be cautious with the Kool-Aid. Nothing worse than a Kool-Aid hangover when the other shoe drops. Hey, exactly, right? But you always like, it's just like having that friend, right? We all have that one friend that like just overconsumes. And so Lions Nation is no different. There's always those couple of fans that just take a few too many shots of Kool-Aid to the head. But but again, that's what makes sports fun. Um Shout out Casey, also sorry, only so much Kool-Aid and cornbread you can stomach. And shout out to Soul Surfer clarifying only 10 days of OTAs. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I knew that there was only like a certain amount of time. I know they start mini camp in a couple weeks. I think, like I said, I think they have like a week or two off and then they come back for mini camp. I'll have to, like I said, I'll have to fish those dates out for you guys. But like I said, either way, I'll be here on Monday. We're gonna talk about some more Lion stuff. Like always, I appreciate you guys coming by. I appreciate you guys jumping in the chat, hanging out with me, engaging. We cracked 300 subscribers, which is awesome. This channel is not even a full month old yet, and we've already cracked 300 subscribers. I'm super thankful, super appreciative of everyone that's subscribed, everybody that watches the videos. You guys make this, like I always say, you guys make this fun. You guys make this so much fun for me to come on here and live stream. 3 days, 2 to 3 days a week. So I appreciate you guys. Again, like the video if you haven't done it. If you have done it and you are subscribed, share it with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with another Lions fan, and let's just continue to root for the Lions and continue to have a good time doing it. I appreciate you guys. Have an amazing weekend. The weather's awesome. Have fun with your friends, your families, whoever it may be, and I will catch you guys on Monday. Later.